Hey everyone, welcome back to Speak English Fluently. I'm Emma, and today we're diving into a topic that every English learner struggles with at some point: translating. You want to speak naturally, but your brain keeps switching to your native language first. You translate, then speak, and it slows everything down. Today we're going to break that pattern and show you how to think directly in English.
And I'm James. This is a powerful topic because translation is the number one thing that blocks fluency, creates hesitation, confusion, and fear of making mistakes. When you translate, your sentences come out late, they sound unnatural, and your confidence drops. But once you learn how to stop translating and start producing English automatically, everything changes: your speed, your clarity, your flow.
Let's begin by understanding why translation happens. When you learned your first language, you learned it directly from life, from sounds, images, actions, and emotions. But when most people learn English later, they learn through school, textbooks, and grammar rules. That creates a habit where your brain tries to match English to your native language constantly. Breaking that habit takes practice, not talent.
Another reason is that your native language feels safe and familiar. When you think in it, the words come naturally. But switching to English feels like stepping into a new environment, uncomfortable at first. That discomfort makes your brain go back to the old habit of translation. It's normal, but it's changeable.
To stop translating, the first step is accepting a simple truth: English and your native language will never match perfectly. Word for word translation doesn't work. Every language has its own rhythm, structure, emotion, and logic. Instead of trying to fit English into your language, you need to learn how English expresses ideas differently.
And one of the best ways to do that is to think in ideas, not words. Don't try to translate a full sentence. Start from the idea behind the sentence. For example, instead of thinking, "How do I say this sentence in English?" ask yourself, "How would an English speaker express this idea?" This instantly removes pressure.
Let's talk about a powerful technique: micro-thinking in English. This means thinking in tiny pieces, single words, short phrases, small descriptions. Instead of thinking, "I have to speak everything in English," start with micro thoughts like cold, hungry, busy day, I'm ready, let's go, not yet. These small thoughts grow into bigger ones.
Another technique is narration, one of the fastest ways to stop translating. Narrate your actions in English. I'm opening the door. I'm making tea. I'm checking my phone. This connects English directly to your real life, not through translation.
Narration rewires your brain. Your actions become the trigger, not your native language. The moment you move, your brain produces the English phrase. This is how you break the translation habit.
Another technique is object labeling. Look at something and say the English word instantly. Chair, cup, window, bag, charger, phone. Then expand: blue chair, big bag, old charger, clean window, heavy phone. Expansion builds thinking speed because your brain moves directly in English without switching languages.
Let's talk about why translation slows your speaking. When you translate, your brain performs 3 steps. 1. Understand the idea in your language. 2. Search for English equivalents. 3. Build a correct English structure. That's too slow for real conversation. But thinking directly in English reduces these steps to 1.
So how do you build that direct connection? Through repetition. The more you use a sentence or phrase directly in English, the faster your brain grabs it next time. That's why daily self-talk is powerful. When you say something repeatedly, your brain stores it as a ready-made chunk.
This brings us to one of the most effective tools for natural fluency: Chunk learning. Instead of memorizing words alone, learn groups of words that naturally appear together. I'm not sure. Let me see. What do you mean? That sounds good. I didn't expect that. Chunks bypass grammar rules. They give you automatic fluency.
Let's go deeper into this. When you learn chunks, you're learning English the way native speakers actually use it. Natives don't think about grammar while speaking. They use familiar patterns. When you learn the same patterns, you speak without translating.
Another technique to stop translating is visualization. Instead of thinking of words in your native language, imagine images, actions, or scenarios. For example, instead of thinking, how do I say trees in English? Imagine actual trees and let trees appear naturally. This connects English directly to meaning, not your other language.
Visualization is how children learn language. They see something and the word comes. They don't translate. When you rebuild that connection, English becomes smoother.
Another important technique is listening. When you listen to English daily, especially natural conversations, your brain becomes more familiar with how English sounds. The more exposure you get, the less you translate because your brain starts predicting patterns automatically.
And listening without subtitles is an even faster way to break translation habits. Subtitles connect English to your language, but listening without them forces your brain to depend on sound and context. Even if you don't understand everything, this trains your brain to think in English.
Another strategy is shadowing. When you shadow, repeat what you hear instantly. There's no time for translation. You hear the sound, your mouth produces it immediately. This bypasses the translation process completely.
Shadowing also improves fluency because your brain learns rhythm, tone, and speed. You start speaking in natural English patterns, not translated ones.
Now, let's talk about one of the biggest habits to avoid: translating in your head during a conversation. When someone speaks to you in English, don't try to understand every word. Focus on the main idea. Look at their expression, tone, gestures. Natural communication is about understanding the message, not perfect translation.
When you aim for the message instead of the words, your listening improves and your anxiety drops. You stop freezing in conversations and start responding naturally.
Another powerful technique is to speak with simpler English. Many learners translate because they try to say complicated sentences. They want to express everything exactly as in their own language. But English doesn't always work that way. Sometimes simple is better.
For example, instead of translating, I am unable to attend due to unexpected circumstances, you can simply say, I can't come. Something happened. That's clearer, more natural, and much easier for your brain.
Simplicity builds fluency. Complexity builds hesitation. Once you become comfortable with simple English, you can naturally expand later.
Another trick to avoid translation is using starter phrases. These are sentence beginnings that help you start speaking immediately. I think, maybe, the thing is, in my opinion, I guess. These open the door so your brain can relax and form the sentence naturally.
Let's talk about something learners rarely realize. Translation is not only mental, it's emotional. When you think in your native language, you feel comfortable and safe. Switching to English can feel uncertain, but when you practice small English thinking moments throughout the day, your brain learns that English is safe too.
That's why self-talk is one of the most important habits. You create a low-pressure environment where your brain gets used to producing English freely. No fear, no mistakes to worry about.
Another technique is English zones. Choose parts of your day where you allow only English in your mind. For example, morning routine, during travel, while cooking, before sleeping. These zones help English become automatic.
Let's talk about grammar and translation. Many learners translate because they fear grammar mistakes. They try to think correctly before speaking. But natural English doesn't require perfect grammar. It requires flow. Grammar improves automatically when you use English regularly.
Think of grammar like riding a bicycle. You didn't learn by reading rules. You learned by moving, falling, adjusting, and repeating. English works the same way. Practice comes first. Rules come later.
Another way to avoid translation is to build English instincts. For example, if someone asks, "How's it going?" your instinct response should be, "Good. How about you?" You don't translate it. You feel it.
Instincts are built through exposure. Every time you hear common phrases, use them. Don't analyze. Don't translate. Just repeat and adopt them.
Now let's talk about reading. Reading English daily, even for 5 minutes, builds natural structures in your brain. The more you read, the more comfortable English becomes internally. You start thinking in the patterns you see.
A good trick is to read stories or dialogues. These mimic real conversation flow, so your brain absorbs natural phrasing.
Another method is journaling. Write your thoughts in English every day. It doesn't need to be perfect. Journaling makes your brain think in English because you're expressing real thoughts, not memorized sentences.
Speaking of real thoughts, let's talk about emotion-based thinking. When something surprises you, try saying, "Wow, really? No way. That's crazy. That's interesting." These emotional expressions work instantly in English without translation.
Emotional expressions help you connect English to feelings, not to grammar or native language structure. Feelings are universal, so they help you think faster.
Another critical point: stop comparing English to your language. They are different systems. Translation creates frustration because you're trying to force one system into another. Instead, treat English as something independent.
That's why English phrases often don't make sense when translated literally. For example, "What's up?" does not mean "what is above." "Break a leg" does not mean "break your leg." "Hang out" has nothing to do with hanging. Stop searching for literal meaning. Look for intention and usage.
When you treat English, not as a version of your language, your fluency grows faster.
Let's talk about confidence. Translation kills confidence because it creates long pauses. Long pauses make you feel slow and unsure. But thinking directly in English shortens the gap between thought and speech.
And when you speak without long delays, you sound more fluent immediately, even if your grammar isn't perfect.
Another useful technique is question-response training. Take a simple question and answer it immediately in English. "How are you?" "What did you do today?" "What do you think about this?" Speed matters more than perfection.
Fast responses break translation habits. They train your brain to operate in English instantly.
Another great method is repetition. If you hear someone say a sentence that sounds natural, repeat it slowly, then faster, then in your own version. Repetition makes the sentence yours.
Let's talk about environment. If your environment is full of your native language, your brain will naturally switch to it. So create an English environment. English music, English podcasts, English videos, English conversations. This constant exposure keeps your mind in English mode.
And here's something important. Don't wait for perfect conditions. You don't need a teacher or partner to think in English. Your mind is enough.
Another trick: when you don't know a word, don't stop. Explain it in English. For example, if you forget the word wallet, say, "The thing I use to keep my money." This is natural speaking.
Explaining ideas in simple English trains your brain to think creatively inside the language. It eliminates the translation barrier.
Now, let's talk about vocabulary. Memorizing lists forces your brain to translate. But learning vocabulary in context, stories, conversations, movies, connects English directly to meaning.
Context builds natural memory. When you hear a word in a story, your brain remembers it more easily because it's alive, not isolated.
Another technique to stop translating is to speak before thinking fully. Start the sentence, then build it as you go. I think. For me. Well, maybe. This is how native speakers talk too.
Beginning immediately gives your brain time to catch up without freezing. Keeps the conversation flowing.
Another big step is embracing mistakes. If you're afraid of mistakes, you translate. If you accept mistakes, you speak freely. Mistakes are part of fluency.
Fear blocks fluency. Confidence creates fluency. When you stop trying to be perfect, your brain stops translating.
Let's talk about speed. Slow thinking equals translation. Quick thinking equals fluency. Practice quick reactions in English to build speed.
One great exercise is rapid-fire sentences. Pick a word and make 5 quick sentences. Apple, I like apples. This apple is big. Do you want an apple? This trains speed instantly.
Another technique is switch phrases. Use a phrase that helps your brain move to English immediately. What I mean is, I want to say, these are my thoughts. Phrase starters push your brain into English mode.
Let's talk about real-life application. Use English for small things. Searching on Google, reading menus, using your phone in English, talking to yourself during daily life. This builds constant exposure.
The more English you use in real situations, the less translation your brain performs. It begins to operate naturally.
Another important point: don't judge your English. Don't compare it to others. Comparison pushes you back to translation because you fear being wrong.
Instead, focus on progress, small steps. If you can think one more sentence in English today than yesterday, that's improvement.
Now let's build a quick routine that stops translation. Morning, narrate your actions. Afternoon, think in English while walking. Evening, use English during hobbies. Night, reflect in English. This keeps your brain in English throughout the day.
And always reward yourself for thinking in English, even if it's small. Positive reinforcement makes the habit grow.
Let's talk about long-term impact. When you think in English daily, your fluency improves naturally. You don't need to force it.
Over time, English becomes part of your identity. It feels comfortable, familiar, and natural.
And once English feels natural, translation disappears on its own.
Remember, translation is a habit, not a requirement. Habits can be changed through new habits.
And the new habits we discussed today, narration, visualization, chunk learning, shadowing, self-talk, will slowly replace translation with natural thinking.
You don't have to be perfect. You just need to be consistent.
And consistency is what transforms passive English into active fluency.
So keep practicing, keep thinking in English, and don't let fear push you back into translation.
Trust the process. Fluency is built through small, repeated actions.
Thank you for joining us in today's episode.
If you enjoyed this lesson, please like, share, and subscribe.
Keep thinking
And keep speaking English fluently.
and keep speaking English fluently.